Okay, welcome everyone. If you've not met me before, see me on some video. My name is Matt Bezick. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Trail Association. Previously, I worked in the Upper Bound and Talent Search program out of Clatsop Community College. So today we are trying to get together to just kind of do almost like a program share, just to get together best practices, discuss challenges and tips and tricks to help with recruiting. At this point, we're well into the school year and folks are kind of facing the reality of whether or not they are at their numbers close or if it's kind of getting into that danger zone. So what we want to do is just kind of get together and see if we can't all just share ideas and brainstorm some stuff. I have a presentation, just some basic stuff through all my conversations with folks at different programs, people in different states and regions, kind of some suggestions and tips that I have. But I think where I maybe want to start is just kind of open the floor and just hear what your challenges are first, right? Because they're all going to be different depending on the kind of programs you're with. We literally have people from McNair, SSS, Upper Bound Talent Search, and EOC here, right? So we're kind of across the board. It kind of differs program by program, but want to start just by opening the floor, or you can put it in the chat to kind of where are you all seeing the biggest challenges when it comes to recruiting?
So I'm an SSS program at a small community college. I'm in Astoria. And so we have this really weird thing going on. We're almost maxed out on our singles. I serve 160 and I'm at 140. And so our singles, I think I have space for one or two more single qualified. But the weird thing is most of my single qualified is like 84, 85%. Are first gen only. They're not low incomes this time. And what we're finding is our population, that's why they're single qualified, that family income is higher than it used to be in our area. And not quite sure why, but I'm sure we can brainstorm a couple of reasons. But that's been difficult. We're still getting our trickle of students that's pretty average for us. And we're actually doing really well. We're higher than we usually are. But it's those single students that I'm having concern about, and what we're going to be making a wait list pretty soon for those students. So consequently, we'll probably lose them to other resources when we go to look for them for next year. So it's a little bit different than what we're normally used to seeing. I don't know if anybody else is having those issues of higher income than what you're expecting.
I do think I have heard that almost across the board. And Troy Henry shared something out on like the listserv too. And like Oregon just has the fourth highest cost of living. Like I think it's different here and we don't get the prorated rates. So I think that is a real challenge if you're trying to maintain that 2/3 balance, just the income piece. So I have some maybe thoughts or creative ideas, and part of me wants to discuss it in this sense because I need to get a sense of it, if you even think it's allowable, what one of my ideas is. But I'm curious if there are any other folks that are facing different kinds of challenges related to recruiting.
We have a unique challenge. Hi, my name's Andres. Oh, my camera's off. Over at Western University, Monmouth. We're just having a low enrollment overall in the university, and it doesn't help that we just have a new program called Teacher Prep that took all of our ed students. So it was a large portion of our population. So all of those students went to that new program, and we're just trying to struggle with what's coming in every year. So that's just the overall low college enrollment. You know, it's hard.
I don't know if it's been said already, but one of the things that we've been struggling with is the student engagement piece. So they don't want to join another club because they're burned out, or they just don't want to be engaged, or they just want to go home and lay, or any whatsoever. So really trying to convince them about the value of our programs and what it can really benefit as long as they're engaging with it and participating. So trying to find creative ways, and on Upward Bound, at least we have the stipend way to encourage them, but we've had to reevaluate what language we use to the students, to what can we use to kind of catch that engagement, catch their interest in why they should be a part of our program.
In the chat there was some, so Western got like the teacher prep SSS program. So I think that's what Andres was talking about, is that they kind of, when you add a second one, they kind of transition all the education majors at Western into that other trio program. So they saw like a depleted caseload that I think they've been trying to get back. Yeah, I making an assumption there, but quick question, Keely. Are there anybody who's struggling on the upper bound side? Because usually those caseloads are low enough, particularly when you have talent search in the same schools, that you can just kind of steal from there. So from what I hear, usually it's more the talent search side that is struggling to recruit.
I've had some with both, especially with the upper bound, trying to convince them to leave ETS or to bring in the ETSers because they're either so busy with the other activities and programs that they're involved with, or they don't want to participate in 2 to 3 activities a month, whether it's a monthly seminar. So they get really overwhelmed with how the increased participation in the upward bound program. So even though we have the stipend and have that increased benefit part of it, especially in some of our schools, they trying to convince them, like, why should I participate in all this stuff when I want to go play video games or want to Snapchat or be real all day?
Be real.
Thing.
Any other overall challenges?
I was gonna say, actually with the trio at Portland State, and I think our only challenge is kind of making sure we meet our 2/3. But we have kind of set a task of like, we're waitlisting anyone who isn't both LIFG. So it is kind of hard when we're going through all of our schools to make sure we're getting enough kids for the LIFG part. I'm pretty sure we're close to our numbers though. That's for talent search and upward bound as well. We're only letting in, both LIFG. Where in the past, I know we've like let in like maybe for just low income or maybe only first gen, and maybe they have that academic need. Like we're really only focused on LIFG. So we've been really recruiting and having the help of our kids in upward bound, helping us make like our students are like, because I was the middle school coordinator for 4 years and now I'm in high school. So I've known all these kids for like 5+ years. And so I've been able to hit them up and have them bring kids in and people they know through the schools, and we did candidates. So it's been really helpful.
And for people who may be newer or unfamiliar, whatever your caseload is, you're required to, at any given time, you should have 2/3 be double eligible. So some programs will just, they'll recruit to whatever the single eligible are up to they're fully served, but that may put you under like the 2/3 ratio, right? So that's kind of a director thing. It's recommended that at no point in time are you ever above that or below 2/3 low income first gen, because if you were audited, you would be in violation and kind of out of compliance with your grants. So that just for some context of kind of why that 2/3 matter. Any others about specific kind of challenges you are facing regarding recruiting beyond what we've kind of covered so far? I kind of want to shift to this first before I go through kind of the basic stuff I have, and before we go to kind of a space where we can all share out. So I was discussing this with someone recently. I've seen a lot of applications. People have been trying to make them available online. You just want to make it as easy as possible to apply beyond like a paper form. So hopefully a lot of you have digital applications by now, whether you're using your database system, whether it's Blooming or Student Access, that have helped you build that online, or you have some PDF form. Like that is obviously a great idea. It makes it so that the student can't just lose it in a backpack or lose one more form. But there's a lot of questions, because when it comes to qualifying as low income status, we are allowed to let them self-report. We don't need to. And now that this gets more, it's probably into the pre-college world. And the SSS level, you all are connected with financial aid offices. So there's maybe not quite as much you can do, but we are allowed to let them self-report. So what I've seen most people go to, instead of asking very technical questions about put line 15 on your 1040 onto this form in the application, that's your taxable income, that can sometimes get confusing. So I've seen people go to checkboxes, right? We take that low income guidelines the feds give us that are based on household size, and you just have them check the box based on your household size. Usually that's a separate question, and then you just have them check a box of which income guidelines do you fit in. Now, most people put that box up there because you're trying to make it obvious that you qualify as low income if you fit within this box based on like your household size. So I've seen people approach that differently, but I kind of wanted to raise a question. If we're allowed to let them self-report low income status, I'm kind of glad that I have Christine and Linda. I have some peer reviewers on here. I am asking, is it allowable on your application form? You ask household size, and when you ask for income, can you just ask them if they are a low income student, yes or no? And then you put that chart. So instead of having them check on the chart, the box, the income range that they fit in, you just ask the question, yes or no, and you provide the chart.
Yeah, actually, some programs do that, and a lot, and I've seen that probably like 50-50. And here's
Okay.
the chart, tell me where you land in the chart. And then, and they look, and they'll answer yes or no. So they're saying, they'll look at the range, and then they just answer yes or no. They're not actually stating their income. I don't know. I don't know how that, I mean, I see programs doing it. I'm sure somebody went to a training and said it was okay, because I see a lot of programs do it. We don't do it. We're still asking for numbers. But I mean, come on, when you get a family income that's like 30,000, that that's not the exact thing on their taxes anyway.
Right.
They have very few are that way. So usually I question a little bit more where the number came from, just to make sure the student did not just, make it up, but that actually the parents said, yeah, I think we make around 30,000. They're signing it. It's self-declared. It's still, I mean,
Yeah,
I might have
that's
guessed.
kind of why I raise this, because if you just ask them, are you low income, and you provide the charts, I think we're doing what we need to from a
I think
compliance
so.
status. And if they just go like, oh yeah, I'm low income, and they don't think too hard or look specifically at the low income status, you're still having self-reporting, you're having the parent signature, the data's on there. Like, am I saying under the table, is this a sneaky way to get doubles that maybe aren't technically qualified?
I don't know.
But that
Because we just reviewed a program that is an SSS program that has been around for a long time, and they have the tables there. And I think you're still getting the same thing. I think it may not be, I mean, you're still asking, are you an income in this range? I mean, you're not asking for they're looking at the range instead of us looking at the range, is what it comes down to.
correct. Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're saying I'm above or below this line. And so I think it's still the same idea. I don't know, maybe Linda has a different take on it, but I'm thinking it's fine. I see a lot of folks do it.
So my take, if I were reviewing your program, I'm going to ask the hard questions, like coming in as, let's say, a Department of Ed person, and I'm going to ask the harder question. I don't do that on our application. I actually have the chart, because sometimes students don't do it correctly, and I'm an SSS program. They don't do it correctly. They don't understand household size, and sometimes they do themselves a disservice because they don't understand what we're looking for. So I know on our application, we do have like, please look at, if you file taxes, please look at line 15. And if it still looks kind of wonky, that's when I go to our financial aid office and say, hey, can you let me know if you all think the student is considered low income? And they will provide me a statement like, yes, the student is considered low income based on the information we have on their FAFSA.
But the FAFSA is adjusted gross, it's not taxable. So then you go into the whole argument. So,
Yeah, it's usually
Troy.
Christine. Oh, I'm so sorry, Troy. I know you have your hand up, but I was going to say about the FAFSA, and when people used to use the student aid report, you're right, Christine. It's the adjusted gross income and not the taxable income, and that's where student programs are also getting into that gray area when they are looking at adjusted gross income and not the taxable income, because that's what the chart is based on. Sorry, Troy. Yes.
No, it's okay. I'm kind of jumping in because I've not been a peer reviewer yet. I've had the training, but and I apologize if this has been touched on earlier. I had to help a student at the beginning of the call, but I just wanted to say, like, in terms of one, like the ethics of this, I think, like, to what Linda's speaking to, like, to me, I don't feel like there's a big, at least ethical conundrum if that's bothering people, if it's not just getting, worrying about being popped if you get an audit, because I think for the number of erroneously filled out, like where people are doing themselves a disservice, I think that happens a lot. But I was going to say, like, with pre-college trio, where we don't have the benefit that SSS and sort of those post-secondary programs have of being able to go to the financial aid office, one thing that works as a pretty decent proxy now that we're back to kind of post-pandemic, not across the board free federal lunch programs. A lot of times we'll get hung up on our applications with that section, because people don't necessarily have easy access to exactly what their income level is. And so I just wanted to say, if people are newer to this, you can often go to an administrator at the school, principal or vice principal, and ask, hey, can you verify that this student qualifies for free, not reduced, right? Because they're different standards. But if they are on the free lunch list, then you can take care of that problem, accept the application, and usually in that case, make it double eligible.
I don't review talent search programs very often, very, very seldom. Is that what the law says that you can use for low income? Do they list there as free lunches? I honestly don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I know that in the specifics, we've checked with our program officer for the grant officer, whatever the correct terminology is. And they said, yes, that's an acceptable metric.
Yeah, I can confirm, so that's one of the recommendations. If you can work with your high school and get a school approved list from them, you don't need to check financial information from any of the family. Like, you have your reporting from the school and you just can count every single one of those as low income. So you still need the application from the student. You need to show first gen, but you can just reference that list even on their application to say we have a free reduced. And it's nicer now because before that, or the challenge is some of the schools are auto enrolled. And that kind of like defeats the purpose then, because it's not actually check-in. So we kind of need it in this time where they actually have to enroll, because that's the only way it will help you in this process. But all these conversations around, I think one of the biggest challenges is that when you just have the income, like we just have income challenges, it just doesn't seem like there's enough low income students based on inflation in Oregon and what people make in Oregon. So it's like, what are creative ways to get around it? So the EFC 0, that's just a cut and dry, knock out of the park way to do it. Free reduced lunch ways to do it. My suggestion is a way to maybe change your application, because all we can adjust is what we're looking at, and we're allowed to self-report. So that's why my suggestion was, if you just put yes or no, are you low income? There's a chance some people may miss reports, but again, to that ethical conundrum, you're giving them all the information. You can even reference the right tax line, like you can give them the information, but you just let them do that work and ask a yes or no. Will you get a few more low-income students that maybe technically wouldn't have qualified, possibly, but they also could just, that I think we see way more the other way around, where they over-report their income, and then we can't take them in as a low-income student, or it requires a ton of legwork on your part to follow up with the parents and try to get that amended beyond the first application.
I don't know if I do that, Matt. I don't know if I do that. If I had the tables there and then I had them decide if they were low income or not, I'd have to go back and see exactly what the law says. We need Zach here. I can't remember exactly what the law reads. I could go find it, but I know it's there's that list of 3 things, but yeah. I don't know. This would be an interesting question to talk about on that pre-con at the, to see about that. I know what you're saying, that we'll lose.
Yeah.
But when I bring people in, I meet with each student individually and we go over that income piece to make sure that it's all the right way. And that, if they are less than 24 or younger, we're looking at family income, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure other people have opinions, but I'm a really conservative director too. So I don't take a lot of chances on that eligibility stuff.
Yeah. And to Troy's, I've seen a lot of people go to this checking the boxes in the range. I'm kind of pushing it just one step even further to just the, are you low income and you provide, just, you might get a few more to sneak through, and every single one counts. I can tell you the other saving grace might be if we can serve the undocumented students. That's still just pending. Department of Ed is just slow. So I'm hoping that that can happen sooner rather than later. And then that would create some optionality where you can maybe serve some of those additional students. There's probably more likely than not a high percentage of those students would qualify as low income. So hopefully that would help folks just kind of get closer to those final numbers.
In that waiver, are you is there some sort of language in that waiver that's asking about how we're determining that low income? Because for us, if parents are living in Mexico and the student is living with a family member or a friend here in the States, and it's asking for family income, and they're and they're undocumented, what do I do with that? Or if they're traveling back and forth and they're making money here and they're making money in Mexico or south of the border, doesn't have to be Mexico, but any of those countries, what do I do with that info? I mean, how do I do that? How am I looking at income? Is there any writing in the waiver that's going to give us direction on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Keely.
I just got out of one of the priority trainings down in Portland. And so one of the presenters commented that in situations like that the student report on whoever they live with, like most of the time, and that person who supports the student, who directly is taking care of the student. So if they aren't living with their parents or their parents are in another country, then that's not the income that they're reporting on. I don't know, that's what they advised us on when I was in that training.
And I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just curious.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's helpful.
How does that work then if I am saying that the student is first gen because their parents did not graduate from a university, but the person that they're staying with is not first gen? But I'm using that person's income. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess that goes along the lines of also if a student is a foster student or if they're a homeless student, it's difficult in those situations because we have those direct parent lines for that first generation piece, but who's taking care of them? I have several students that are living with a brother or living with their grandparents. And so at least that's the recommendation that they shared, is just who are they currently living with, because that's the income that is supporting that student currently. Whereas
Right.
the first generation piece, that is their direct family members.
Okay.
So
And yeah, it would be nice in this waiver if we had that a little more lined up about what the feds that are giving us this waiver anticipate us using for that income.
sorry, anyone else want to comment? Sorry.
Yeah, I should, no, I'm done.
Yeah, go ahead, Tota. Well, you're still muted.
Well, right, 3 years of practice is still. Sorry, I'm to follow. I'm a McNair at Portland State. For McNair, the income requires us to look at the tax forms, of course, and you all know that we saw that two people over-report. I'm also looking at some of the taxes. I'm going, who's doing your taxes? I'm looking at the family. Going, you should be getting a lot more. Yeah. Anyway. That's the way we do it. I like the conversation about how we can push these requirements. We are the people who define what they mean. We are the people at the front line, and we have to we push it. We've pushed everything at PSU up to a certain point. It's hard to push on the taxes, but everything else we've pushed, and I think we have an obligation to push the definition of these things. Wherever there's a gray area, we push, because we know we're working with students. We are the ones who define this. We define them from the margin. We are at the margin, and that's how we do it. We can help, and our legislature can help. We also have COE and all of that. Anyway, thanks. Sorry. Just
No, that's I think that's important because I don't want to get too into like the citizenship thing, but that's what I found is like the department's going to give you minimal guidance. And there are clear, immense contradictions in there. And it comes to us as practitioners to determine how we're going to implement these things. And particularly if you're newish to TRIO, probably almost none of us has even worked in TRIO since they last reauthorized the Higher Education Act. Like it's been over 12 years now. So every year they do appropriations, they fund our programs, but they can't ultimately change what's in those languages. So it's an immensely slow moving process to change things that don't totally make sense when it comes to our objectives and measurements and some of these guidelines. So we need to get creative about how we do that, right? So, and sometimes it's pushing the limits, but that unfortunately, this often comes down to the program director and how much risk they're willing to take in that process, because they're not going to find clear guidelines. You'll find people that can justify why they're doing what they're doing, but you can reasonably question it as well. And it's hard for us to anticipate what the Department of Ed would do. I can let you know, like behind the scenes, I'm trying to see if I can find a former TRIO auditor from Department of Ed that no longer works for them and just be like, how much money do you need to come and just tell us what you all look for behind? Like, I would love to pick their brain and understand internally what it is they actually look at and look for, because it may be a completely different thing than kind of what we have. We can get recommendations from COE and folks who are connected with people who get audited frequently. They can give best practices, but I would love to really understand that more in depth. So I'm trying to work that out. Okay, I'm going to jump quick. I hope to kind of go through this quick. This is a quick presentation I put together that are just some like best practices and things to think about in recruiting that are beyond just like how do we manipulate our applications to potentially get more low-income students, right? So I kind of have it broken into 3 different compartments. There is the group recruiting, right? Kind of doing it individually, and then through parents, because regardless of what programs are in, we all still are required in most cases to get that parent information to get them qualified to get in. So as far as groups, they obviously are impactful because they just have high volume, whether you're in a high school or you're in a college course. If you can get in front of a whole classroom of people, it's nice because it's a lot of students that can hear about your program and your message. The problem is it's usually pretty low impact. Now that depends on the individual and the kind of presentation you're giving. But I've been in plenty of classroom presentations where like nobody even takes a brochure afterwards, right? Let alone complete one. But you can do these in the classrooms. You can get a full assembly depending on your relationship, whether it's a school, whether it's I know colleges don't always do this, especially in the bigger end, but the more people you can get in front of, just so there's a general awareness that you even exist and you're there, you want to push for those. You want to do these things because it's efficient use of your time. But keep in mind, it's not just magically, you can't just present in front of one assembly at, I worked out of Warrenton High School. It's a smaller high school. They only have like 250 students. Like I can get in front of an assembly pretty easily, but that doesn't mean 100 people are going to apply the next day. But it can't hurt to still do that, and particularly in staff meetings. So this can apply pre-college or college, but they're often going to be your best advocates because nobody has better relationships with students than those who are seeing them every single day in class. So the more the staff is intimately aware of the work you do and the benefits it provides to students, the more they can self-identify students who could benefit from these services. I think most people would say when you get those recommendations from staff are often just the best fit. And then it also makes the student feel special because they were kind of like chosen and selected. So doing staff meetings, even if it's one-on-one talking with teachers or professors and just making sure that they're intimately aware of what your program does and the benefits that they can have, you just kind of are expanding the number of quote unquote staff that you have to help in your recruiting efforts. We often serve as kind of supplemental help to the high schools, to the colleges, and kind of can fill in some gray areas, but there's no reason it can't work both ways, or they can kind of help scratch our backs as well in these recruiting efforts. So my recommendations when it comes to the big group stuff is you really, if you're in front of the students, you got to focus on feelings and not stats, because most parts, they don't particularly care how much money you're going to save them or how much you're going to help them with college and all of those sort of things. You would think that would work. It's really easy to go rattle off all the benefits that come with this, but like they're there for the vibes and the field trips often and the relationships, and not so much to like save money. So So unless it's like parents, right? That's different. The parent thing is a whole separate, but if you're in front of the students, you kind of got to just sell them on envisioning themselves as a trio student. So if you have any kind of video or that you can utilize, like I know I've helped people put those together before. If you have video footage you can use from field trips, that is immensely helpful. If you can bring in students currently in your program and have them sell the program, or you record them doing testimonies, like leverage the students you already have to kind of sell the program. So it's peers selling it to themselves. If you can get alumni to come in, because they're just going to listen to them differently than they are you. But at the end of the day, you ultimately need to sell yourself, particularly if you are one of the advisors. What makes Trio special is like it's your relationship with that student. So you can focus on services all day, but like identify what it is you do best. So maybe you're great at like smaller conversations, or if you're amazing in front of a group and can just put on a great show and have a great group presentation, like lean into that, go like way over the top. You want to make sure that like when you come in as a guest speaker, it's not some boring guest speaker. This is like the fun Trio person who's going to do something off the wall wild. I remember I used to ask for like a full class period. I would spend the first half selling the program and talking about it, and then the second half they would do like a GeoGuessr game, and I would just buy the entire classroom. The classroom, it was like all health classes if I was presenting to 10th graders, and whatever class that day got the high score in GeoGuessr got like donuts the next day or whatever, right? So I like made them compete. So it had nothing to do with Trio, but it just made it a fun day. So they're just like, oh man, they just associate donuts and fun with Trio, right? Those are kind of the vibes I was going for. But figure out what it is you have to sell, what makes you unique, what are the things you do best in your Trio work, and like, how do I leverage and sell that? Because ultimately you're usually the one who sells the program and not like services per se. And even at the college level, like maybe you don't always love those students who come in like every single day / week and always want to chat with you. But like they're probably your best peer-to-peer folks who can like sell things, because they love you in the program beyond just like tutoring or services or helping register for classes. So as far as individually, this is immensely personal, but obviously not terribly efficient, because it's just a lot of work, because for every 5 meetings you get, maybe one of them is actually going to complete an application. This probably works better in the high school realm, where you have a contained amount of students on a roster. You know where they are. They're stuck in classes all day, and you're just pulling them out of the right classes. But even at the college level, you can get those staff recommendations and like find those students, make them feel special, like they were selected to apply to this program. You kind of have a meeting with them before they're even on your roster. If you can get those free reduced lunch lists, you can cold call, right? Just go through and be like, which of these students is not on my roster? And you just do like targeted recruiting, and you just kind of hunt them down and make it their project, not in a creepy way, but you just make them feel special and known and seen, and like they are desired to be in your program. And then focusing on those peer recommendations. So most of us know the easiest way to recruit is when you just have students who love your program and they go grab all their friends or their classmates to apply as well. So finding ways to incentivize that. My first recommendation is like, if you can provide real incentives, whether it's through like the unallowable cost fund that we have, or gift cards you can give away, or whatever it is, but if you can incentivize your peers selling your own program for you, that can be immensely helpful. Social media takeovers. This is not all of you maybe necessarily have social media accounts, but if you do, even if you don't, allowing students when they're on field trips. This is something, a takeover more or less is you give a student control of your account so they can post lots of stuff to it on a day of a field trip, or if you're going to do a college visit or a transfer visit or something like that, giving them a chance to post lots of stuff on there and then tag not only themselves, but all their friends and everybody else who's on the trip. Because the way social media works is you may not have a ton of followers, but they all do. And their followers are the exact people you're trying to recruit. So the more you hand over your social to them and they get to be tagged on like this third-party account, all of their friends are now seeing that and seeing the fun things that are happening, particularly on those cultural events, on those field trip days. And it just looks like something they're going to want, they wish they could be a part of and participate in, right? I would say like personalized Trio, that this is the benefit of doing it personally and not as a group. Like you can sit down with a student who's not enrolled in your program and like ask them about their family or their life or what it is they want to do. And you can kind of lay out a map of like, if you join this program, here is how I can help you. and it turns it from something that's on a brochure or some video they saw to like a clear path where they can improve their lives. So it takes longer, but if you can personalize the recruiting and really target individuals and kind of work smarter and not harder, you can really customize it and make it seem very appealing to them. And it also helps save time because, to your point, Keely, you may have talent search students that just they're too involved in sports and they just can't join an upper bound. Well, the sooner you know that, the sooner you know you can just kind of ignore them in your recruiting efforts. You don't kind of waste extra time and energy trying to identify or recruit in students that maybe don't fit. Also, depending on your level of like synergy access or access to internal systems, I know one of my schools, they were not entirely in FERPA, within their bounds of FERPA, but they gave me admin view access that was the assistant principal's access. So like I could go and look at what the parents' jobs were, right? So like I could, within a reasonable idea, guesstimate whether this student probably qualifies or not as being a double eligible student, and then make my recruiting targeted around that. So this is where you need to kind of figure out what situation you're in and what works for you. If you're in a smaller school, you can get a full roster of every single student in that high school and just be meticulous about who it is that is out there to fill in those empty spots that you have on your roster load. If you're in a bigger institution where you can't get that information, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you have more fish to get to, but you need to find a way to make it more personalized and less just kind of broadcasting, because they probably don't check their emails. They probably don't check general websites. You can have all your stuff everywhere about the programs, but you need to make sure they feel connected to you before they even apply. And then the last piece is like the parents. So this is something I've been, I don't know. I never had to go quite to this extent because at the time I was pre-college, we did not have quite the recruiting crunch that we have now, but designate some of your hours to not be necessarily in the school during the school year. Take hours and be at the school events, not just conferences. Go to sporting events and ask to set up a table or go around and talk to parents. And this is where you just sell the crap out of how much money you can save them by just being in TRIO and all the waivers that come with, you know, whether it's applying to colleges or transferring or the free tutoring, just all the free with pretty minimal levels of engagement outside of probably upper bound. There's not a lot in here. So taking time and effort to be in the community, be at sporting events, just be in spaces where parents are. Because if you can get an application in front of a parent, they can in 5 minutes have that thing complete and back in your hand, regardless of whether their student believe and consents to it or not, which is perfect for like a talent search. Like we just kind of need you in here. We need 2 contacts. So thinking outside the scope of your job is just based in the school day and working directly with students. Like if you're struggling to meet numbers, the first thing you need to do in a TRIO grant is just serve the number you're funded to serve, particularly if you're under that 85. Like you can lose a grant, you can lose all your prior experience points, and you don't want to see that happen. So think of creative ways to get in front of the parents who can just complete a full application right then and there. So I would just recommend you mostly sell the financial benefits, sell all the free stuff. Parents love the amount of stuff they potentially don't have to pay for in the future. And then those parents can help spread the word too, where the signature you ultimately need to get the student in your program is kind of pending on them. So the faster they can help spread the word, the better, and it may work even better than the actual students themselves. And then you can get the whole family instead of just like one student who's got 3 siblings. You might be able to just get 4 applications in one sitting because somebody has multiple children, right? So what did I have? I kind of jumped the gun and mentioned this application thing on here, but really think through what your application looks like. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to complete an application, and really think through what your financial self-reporting looks like or how you collect that data. And if there's any, you know, how can you squeeze every single ounce out of that to make sure you can get as many double eligible students as possible with it while staying in compliance. The other piece I would say is you need to get comfortable with both your program and you have to like sell a brand. You're always selling something. The students are having perceptions of you regardless. Kind of what Liz said, they want to know you're not sus, right? You need to always be selling kind of what your brand is. And that's going to be different for each person, each program, each school. So just having that at the forefront of your mind and always be thinking like, what am I presenting myself as? What am I presenting my program as? Not just to students, to parents, to staff, to administration. Like, how do I make this as appealing as possible? Because all those systems around you can make your life easier in recruiting, and they are probably best equipped to recruit compared to you and your individual efforts. So how can you just leverage all of that to make your life easier? So I talked for a while there. Hopefully there was something helpful in kind of that summarization of stuff I've taken from kind of all the programs in different regions I've seen. But I kind of want to say this last 20 minutes just to kind of, if there are additional questions or successes that you all are having, or just open forum time to discuss further recruiting stuff. It's suspect, right? Sus is suspect. You're just questionable person.
So no one's saying anything, but I just want to throw it out there. If anyone needs help coming up with some creative activities, I've created scavenger hunts for most of the colleges and universities around Oregon. So I mean, I'm always willing to share some stuff that I've created. Thanks, guys. I am a big activity person. That's my background in elementary education. No big deal.
I would just say, like, I need to do more of this year, but have had like good success with sort of what Matt was alluding to, with partnering with the schools and districts that you work in, and in like real specific and concrete ways, like getting, you know, stacks of their official envelopes that have the school logo on them. And when I've been following up with students, you know, and they seem so interested, but there's a black hole when the application goes home and never comes back. So how do I get it into the parents' hands? I get an official school letterhead and envelope, and send a note to the parents to say, you know, hey, your son or daughter or whoever has been showing a lot of interest. Here's this application form, and you know, thanks so much. Oh, and also like making phone calls from the school phone line, so that instead of my cell phone number, which, you know, I don't live in Portland anymore, it's like a Portland number, and they're like, let that go to voicemail. It like says, you know, it's their kid's school calling, so they answer. And yeah.
I also want to add in social media has been huge for us, for me specifically with my students in Talent Search and in Upward Bound. And one thing we did do during COVID, which we was at a conference, a virtual conference during COVID, but we did do the live social media when we toured campuses. And when we do out of state or in-state trips, like I love to go live. And then all the kids that are back home that didn't sign up for the trips, they see what we're doing. They hear the laughter. They see the former Upward Bound and Talent Search students that are at the campuses now as students. So social media is huge. I like take pictures, tag all the students in them, and like they love it. So
I would love to take a moment to promote. So Ashley was just talking about the presentations that people might talk about Kahoots, things that they can share. So on our OTA website, there's like a form. If you're not on here, there's only about 60 people on it. But at the very bottom, there's a thing that says join the OTA share drive. So it says Google Drive. Like I said, it's got about 63 people in here, but it's just a place to dump presentations or resources. Most of the stuff is a lot of crap that I've thrown in there from my experience. I would love for more people, just especially if you just have a folder of it on your desktop, just like chuck them in here, right? And just have this be a shared place, whether it's, I mean, some of this is more dorky director stuff, but especially if it's like Kahoots, right? I would love, even if you just have a bunch of links to your Kahoots, putting it on like a Word doc and throwing it over here, but just having a shared space where you can utilize some of those tools or recruiting presentations that you do. But I just kind of want to shout this out as a place that exists and a thing you can sign up for. You need a Google email. So some of the work emails are Microsoft and don't always work. So I do need a Google email to add you, but I'm trying to make this a place where we can just share, just be a place to reference and see what other people have out there and what you can utilize.
Can I just say on the other end, for some of us who work with more non-traditionally aged students, some of this stuff is overwhelming for them in terms of social media, or all these other platforms that we're using. You know, a good example for us is that we use something called, it used to be Virtual Job Shadow, but now it's called Pathful Explorer. You know, all of this stuff for them. Some of these students are like, I feel like I'm missing out because I'm not on these and I don't know how to stay active and I have other things happening in my life. So I know we try to be mindful, like how can we get our information out in different ways? Same information, just sent out in different ways.
I'm curious, I imagine with some of the college programs, there's still a fair amount of your students that are just seen virtually. They're not necessarily like the in-person space. Are there any tips or tricks for reaching that virtual audience that aren't necessarily in the traditional space?
Yes. You know, the best way is what's big is podcasts. Imagine you make one for your grant, your thing, and you tell them like log in at this time and say, or making it like a mandatory, have an incentive for it and like log in and you talk to them. And not only you, but like have your students talk to them. Like all of us over at the pre-college trio, my coworkers, Ike and Yadir and I have been like, instead of us talking, we've been having our like seniors lead and like having them each one teach one, you know, Black Panther Party, like bringing all that culture in. That's huge. And the kids love it. Like we ran our whole February meeting and had all of our students do it. I did Jeopardy Black History Month edition and we had 2 students run it. So, but like, I think podcasts is one of the biggest one. We have one of our seniors at Benson High School and she made a podcast as a sophomore and she's been having kids log in just listening to her and her high school issues. But it can, the same thing can be used in the college format and huge. And then you start sharing it to other PSU, man. Big time way to get that out there, you know?
Has anybody had any success with more at the college level? Like when students are going through the student, just the basic offices they need to do to enroll, or whether it's financial aid, like are there systems in place where those folks know like, hey, you are Pell eligible? Like I see certain triggers on here that make me think that like, oh, I should refer you to whatever the TRIO program is. It's probably harder at like PSU with like you, Linda, because that's just a monstrous school. So like, even if they wanted to send everyone, there's not enough room. But I would think more at the smaller community college level, like you can, the same way we're talking in high school, it's just the more you can work with teachers and administrators and funnel them to you. If you can intimately train up and make sure that those folks at those initial student support offices are aware that you exist, it can help funnel people to you.
We've been sending out, oh, I did it last year. I haven't done it yet this year, but we send out an email to all the faculty talking about what TRIO does. In fact, we made a student handbook. So when we first meet students for the first time, when the advisors do that, they can hand out this handbook that tells you all the stuff going on in TRIO and how to access everything. Because, you know, anytime you have all that information at once, it's hard to remember. But we send out information to faculty and reminding them what we can do, how we can help them and their students. And we do get some referrals that way. I go to faculty meetings, you know, the big monthly faculty meeting, and talk to them too about, you know, please send us students. And it usually gives us a push because they just forget and they don't know that we always are still looking for students, though. I think that they've kind of gotten over not knowing, but we participate in everything. We just went to senior preview day today, and we participate in orientation, and we do anything we can with the faculty members. So just getting our name out there and helping students remember to, hey, yeah, we are the TRIO program. You should sign up. I know you've been trying for 2 quarters, but I bet you could do it now. So, you know, that sort of thing.
All right. Any other kind of thoughts, takeaways? And hopefully this has been helpful. Mostly we're just saying like work harder, which isn't always the best thing, you know. Hopefully that's not what you heard. It's just like work harder, do more. But yeah, really trying to be strategic about what this is. And the reality that like when you don't have your full student caseload, as much as we just want to help students, we have to have enough students to help them. So like it's okay if a lot of your job shifts to recruiting while you're still trying to get those numbers up.
Can I just add something else since we have so many of us on here? I mean, and it just happened today. I was in touch with Troy about a student he referred. And just, you know, these type of partnerships within OTA. I'm thinking of, you know, our colleagues at PCC. You know, someone just said, hey, we're going to be bringing some students to PSU at some point in April. Can we make sure that they come to your office? I'm like, that's fine. We'll be here. But you know, if we can just connect with each other, if you're bringing students, just say we're going to stop by, and I know I could speak for our program that we'd be more than happy to show you and your student our space. And there may be possibilities that our students can talk to your students, because they don't like to hear from us. They'd like to hear from, you know, students from similar background as them. So I just want to offer that to anyone out there. If y'all are bringing students to PSU, please connect with us.
And this is probably obvious, and maybe it was already covered. I apologize if it has been, but this is probably easier in small towns where it's like a little easier to just like recognize names and just, I don't know, a manageable scale. But I've had the most luck, particularly at the middle school level, for talent search and recruiting siblings, in that case, younger siblings of students who are already on my caseload. It's a great place to start, like low-lying fruit, identify your double eligible students on your caseload and look into, I mean, I think that they report siblings on the application. So there's probably ways you can pull this from your student data management database too, and just get yourself a list. And that's just like, I don't know, the effort, the return on effort for that seems to be really high.
Two, we can't hear you.
I know. I just saw that. If you know, it's a plea. If you know any students at PSU, we're still recruiting McNair scholars. We are a little desperate for some reason. We didn't get the usual. We saw the same trends that I was hearing you, where a lot of them were ineligible because they were the taxable incomes were too high. We push there, but still you can only push so far. So if you know any students who are at PSU, or if you want them to move to PSU to be in the McNair program, that's fine. We're looking for underrepresented students, if you know any, and low income first generation. Thank you so much.
All right, if there's not much else, next month we said we were gonna pretty much the entire OTA board is going to be going to Washington, D.C. to talk with policy and legislators and do the policy seminar stuff for advocating for TRIO and appropriations. But we are going to schedule a similar call to this that's going to be focused more on just like collecting feedback so that when we go and meet with them, we can bring like real life challenges. And maybe they're not always stuff that they can directly impact because, like I said, it may be related more to that reauthorization of the Higher Ed Act, but the plan is to kind of meet together as a state again next month so we can just kind of hear out and just hear what kind of continue conversations, what we're hearing today. Just what are the challenges, what are the struggles, and how can we bring that to people that can hopefully make a difference and actually move some of these things so that our jobs can become easier and we can serve more students. So be on the lookout for just kind of the usual calendar invites and information on that for March. Yeah, we're about 5 minutes out. So if people have more questions or have any more comments, you can certainly still jump in, but I do not have anything else to present on here. So I appreciate all the time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. This has been very helpful to hear.